Well, Juice Press 2010. What a vintage year that was. So I started Juice Press in 2010. Originally, the investment was supposed to be $70,000. And I had a partner named Jake, nice guy. He was going to put up 70,000. And man, did we burn through that money fast. We had a business plan that I had written a year or so earlier. But when we were actually in action, I should say, when I was actually building the store, Jake had his own business a few blocks away. It was a health food store. So it was really me that was following a vision of how I was going to build things. And we burned through that 140 pretty quick. And so I put up some more money, and I had a mentor that actually told me something a few years earlier, that if I believed in a concept, I should not be afraid to do whatever it takes to get the store open or get it going. And so that's exactly what I did. The 70 grand that I was supposed to put in there, probably put in four times that amount in, less than 3 or 4 months. And I don't recommend that kind of system for anybody who's starting a business. The question is that if you're not an experienced entrepreneur and you have a business plan that's probably going to be full of holes, maybe not, maybe you put it together meticulously, but if you're not a master samurai at opening retail, really you have to spend the money that you have put aside to build your business and nothing more. And I guess I was fortunate at the time that I had some money put aside. And I was also fortunate that I was a risk taker, and I wasn't concerned in the least that I had gone over budget, um, because I wanted to build the company the right way, and I had always had it in my head that Juice Press was going to succeed and be a company that would work out for me financially. So my third partner at Juice Press was a friend of mine who came in, who saw me building the store. He was in New York. He poked his head into the store and told me, "Wow, this is great. I always wanted to do this. This is fantastic." I just felt a little lonely and wanted some company, and so I said, "Okay, fine. You want to take 10% of the company?" I said, "Give me $10,000." He said, "Fine, you got it. Done deal." I put out my hand. I said, "Where's the money?" He said, "You have to put it on my credit card." So he put $10,000 on his credit card to pay off some bills, some vendors of stuff that I was doing, and he became my partner in Juice Press. And he attracted some really beneficial things early on while I was busy building the brand and the store and considering the menu. He had introduced me to our first chef. He came into the basement, gave me some confidence to try some things that I had previously written down that I wanted to do at Juice Press. He had brought some things, Chef Martin had brought some things to the table that I had never seen before in a New York City food and beverage restaurant. And so the other thing that my partner Alan brought to the table, the $10,000 invested partner brought to the table, was he was an idea guy. He thought really big, and he was a hustler. He was like me. He really hustled and thought about ways to make money. And he gave me a lot of confidence to take risks and keep moving on. My first partner, Jake, who was quite a great guy, really good guy, who had experience in the health food business and who had experience with juice bars, he really wasn't long to be in business with Alan and I, because we were just making a mess of things in a lot of ways, and we were very big risk takers, and we were hiring people that he probably couldn't see the vision of what we were doing, and quite honestly, we were just we were fighting like cats and dogs, the three of us. If it was between me and Jake, or sometimes it was between me and Alan, or sometimes it was Alan and Jake, the three of us were just kind of nutty, pioneers of something. But we weren't, I don't think, as partners, that we were professional enough to actually keep a partnership going. So there was some friction between the three of us. And About a year and a half after we opened up the first juice press store and we saw that it was going to be really successful, as I mentioned in a previous video about how when you have a good business model and you execute upon it well, it's likely like investors pop up out of the woodwork because investors want to put money into something that's going to win. So my father left the family business. He got out of the antiques business and he was watching uh, my business grow for about a year and a half. And he asked me if he could get involved. And at that point, I didn't want him involved on a brand or on a corporate level, but he's my dad and he helped me out. And at the time, he was 73, 72 years old, 74. And what we decided to do was to give him a franchise. And so we had a lawyer draft a franchise agreement. My dad found a store on 62nd Street. The rent of his store was approximately 6 times greater than the rent at my first store, and it was about 4 times larger. So his operation was going to be much more robust and exciting than our first juice press, which was 300 square feet, and the rent was something like $300 a month. We were doing nice volume out of that store at the time, and my dad took a store. We went for it. We just started building the store. I just started to imagine what the store should look like and was trying to modify it. It was the third store I had built for Juice Press. So I had a good idea of the counters, the back of the house, the kitchen, the machines that had to go into place. And the truth is, we had no business plan either in that store. My dad was also a cowboy going for it, and his store was an investment initially of about 600,000, which included the security deposits that he had to leave and lay out for his landlord, which is obviously, uh, you know, money that's in the bank, but you type that money for 10 years, it's like it's gone anyway. So in his store, which he probably had about 70,000 tied up in security deposits. Plus, it was a bigger store, and plus, I was putting more equipment into his store to do things that we were struggling to do downtown. I wanted to remove those struggles from his store. When we opened his store, that store just ramped right up and went ballistic because it was on 62nd Street and 3rd Avenue, much more densely populated area. The brand had already had some traction, and that store hit the ground running from the start. About 5 or 6 months into my dad's operation being open, he started getting wealthy people coming up to him asking if they can invest in the company, if he wanted to do something with them. The operation was just such a well-oiled machine, and it was so visible from external appearances. And what else seemed so tight about the business was that there was always a line and always a mob of people shopping, and so that attracted a lot of interest. So I had gone through sitting for a month or two with 2 or 3 different potential investors that found me. I wasn't necessarily looking, and I didn't necessarily have a plan of how to go through with bringing on a equity partner. But a couple of different groups that came to me had given me some experience because I was identifying how I didn't want to go into business. My first group that I sat with were offering me bupkis to get involved in juice press, and by the time they would be done with their version of a deal, there'd be no opportunity for me to take cash off the table, and there'd be very little capital for us to grow. And the amount of equity that they were taking right off the bat would have made it so that if I had to take more money from them, I would have had to dilute in such a manner that the value of the company, of my version of the company, would have been very, very low. My ultimate investor came from out of nowhere. I could say that my ultimate investor came accidentally because one day I remember this customer, regular customer, nice person. he used to pick up juice for his boss. I never knew who his boss was, but he would always tell me that he was getting juice for the office and is for his boss. And one day he came to me and said, "My boss is the owner of the blah 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 Jets." I thought he said the New York Jets, the football team. I just heard the word Jets, and I was really impressed by that. He said he'd like to meet you, and I said fine. And I believe that it was the following day that this gentleman said, "All right, come on over to this office over here, and you got to meet this guy. He's a great guy. His name is Kenny, and he's got this company, something something Jets." I still wasn't paying attention. I don't know why. It was close by. I walked over to the office, and I got there, and I realized that the gentleman had owned an aviation company called Marquis Jets. And when I came into his office, he was in the process of either selling his company completely back to Berkshire Hathaway, or he had already sold and he was building together his team for other investments that he was involved in. When I met him, he was in a boardroom meeting, and I had to wait at a table listening to them speak. I was kind of busy. I wasn't really engaged. And after a while, I got a little frustrated that nobody was talking to me. So I politely said, "Guys, I got to get up and I got to leave." So I got up and I was walking out. And then Ken, the owner of this company, saw me leaving. He grabbed me, brought me into his his private office. He gave me a free pair of sneakers because New Balance had sent him box loads, truckload of sneakers in different sizes. He gave me a pair of very flashy New Balance sneakers. He said a few words to me, and then I left. A couple of days later, uh, he and a dozen guys in suits and ties and a baseball player who at the time was the first baseman for the New York Yankees, very nice guy named Mark Teixeira. They'd all come to that one little location, and they were talking about the store as if they were investing in Google. And it was a couple of days after that that Kenny had called me himself and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Not much." He says, "We're going down to Orlando for a golf tournament. Can you meet me at Teterboro Airport, private airport?" So, I'm a adventurer. I said, "Absolutely." So I got a car. I didn't have any change of clothing. I just went to Teterboro. Next thing I know, I'm sitting on a Gulfstream, a very fast, beautiful jet. It's just me and Kenny. We're sitting in the airplane, and Kenny says, "We want to get involved in your business. What's it going to take to get a deal done?" And I told him I went into salesman mode at that time. I said, "Well, I have a few opportunities on the table. I'm getting very close with this one group," which was kind of BS. I wasn't getting close with that other group. I was actually not getting close at all with them. I decided not to go with this first group that was looking at Juice Press as an investment. I said, Kenny and I came up with a deal that he thought would work, that he and Mark Teixeira, who was a partner of his, would buy into Juice Press. We would pay off some debt. We would buy out this first partner, Jake, and give him double his money that he had put in a short period of time. And then Kenny would have 12 months to help us put together a Series A, and he would bring the investors to the table. And I don't think at the time we had agreed on the amount of money that he would help raise. I don't think that was the issue. The issue was just trying to make sure that we would clean house together and get ready for the forward march. Kenny knew that I was having problems with my second partner, Alan, and he introduced me to a good friend of his, and we spoke. We had spoken in his office. He was a hedge fund manager. He had been looking at the business, really liked it, and we agreed that this gentleman would help take out my partner Alan, and we bought him out for, I don't know, 1,000 times his investment, something crazy amount like that, 100 times it. Well, anyway, we bought Alan out pretty quick, and this new partner Michael had taken Alan's position, and then we tried to put some structure into the company, and we were going on money coming in pre-Series A had been written. Kenny had managed to get some of his close friends to throw some money at us so that we could keep the forward expansion moving. So from my dad's store, which was the franchise, which was number 3, we were already in motion on store number 4 and 5, and we were ready to start building stores. By the time we had built 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, those stores, I had a very easy system of building. I had a great group of contractors that I worked in, and we would look at these stores, we'd pick them, we'd get deals signed. Landlords were very happy to deal with us at that time, and our stores were relatively small and easy to build. The 5th store became our juice production facility, and store number 2 was our food production facility. And it was still relatively easy for us to distribute our product back and forth because we only had a few stores and they were all in New York City. So the part of the deal that I think was interesting when we started to raise money was that when Kenny and I were on his jet going to Orlando, and he said, "I want to take an aggressive position in your company," what I did was I had relied on my years as a salesman in my father's art and antiques business, which taught me the golden rule is when a customer says, "I'll take it," you've got to put out your hand and you've got to get money. Money has to exchange hands, or there's a chance that the customer will have a chance to think about what they're buying and back out of it. So I told Kenny right there on the plan, I said, "Kenny, I'll do the deal with you, but you got to give me some kind of cash deposit." He was so surprised by his cash deposit. I said, "Yeah, what do you got in your pocket?" And I mugged him on his own jet airplane. He gave me literally $500 as a deposit on a multi-million-dollar deal. And I think he's a consummate salesman. He appreciated when he was being sold by another salesman. And he always jokes about that, how a Syrian mugged an Ashkenazi on a jet airplane high above the North Atlantic Ocean. So I really truly believe that had I not taken that $500 and had I not asked him to guarantee me $25,000, which he wrote me a check in addition to the 500, that $25,000 was a good faith check for him to look more closely at the books. Had I not taken those 2 deposits from him, the difficulty of trapping him down with his schedule and getting him to go through and execute on a deal, I don't actually think it would have ever happened. I remember how much time it took us to actually write the agreements. We went to a big law firm. Kenny and Michael both were professional businessmen, to be honest with you, and their law firms were, $1,200 an hour attorneys that worked in pairs. So we had to structure the first operating agreement. We had to structure the agreement between Kenny and I. Michael was doing all kinds of due diligence on things. And so that whole process took some time. During that time, those guys were sending me out on missions to meet people that were likely going to throw between $25,000 and $1.5 million at Juice Press, because we were going to try to raise $6 to $8 million. And I'm not quite sure with what the valuation was the first time, but it was somewhere around 40 million bucks. And then on the second valuation or the third valuation, at one point we had raised a small amount of money at $107 million valuation, I believe. And at a certain point, the business became self-funded by Michael. Michael took the majority position in the company and also became the principal leader in the company. He was the CEO of the company, and I took a founder's role. But there was a period of time where I would say that we were expanding. We were on a march. I mean, there was a point where we had taken a deal with Equinox, the health club, where we were going to have to build out some ungodly amount of stores in 90 days. And we had to turn over these existing Equinox food components into a juice press component. And some of them had kitchens and some of them didn't. We had a great operator at the time, this gentleman named Peter, who he and I together had found a way to scale everything up, and we were just turning out stores like just instantly. In addition to that, we had some of our own company owned stores that were in construction around New York City, in Boston. We had this big commissary that we were dealing with. We had so much construction going on that I would say that a good portion of my time was spent with dealing with construction and maintenance issues, figuring out the logistics within the kitchen for health and safety and for efficient production and distribution of the product. The business became exponentially complex. And I have to say that among all of us, none of us had the surefire solutions that were needed to run such a complicated business that grew from 0 to 60 overnight. And so I would say that looking back today, I would say that I definitely regret going to a commissary model. And I personally definitely regret expanding too quickly before the business model was able to uh, deal with the type of problems that we would run into trying to grow same store sales without having to raise prices. So, had I known what I know today, and I do, and the business that I'm building right now, I really think that while the excitement of growth and success is always overwhelming and sometimes it's impossible to resist the temptation to, go bigger, it really has to be done in a more methodical and calculated way. It should take a lot longer than it took us to get to 85 stores than it did. It should take, 5, 6 years to get to, you know, 20 really successful stores that are able to demonstrate same store sales growth year over year without having to pump money into everything to keep it floating. You know, I would say that my partner Michael possessed many talents that I could never ever compete with. First of all, he was able to put up money that I would never be able to match to build up the business, but his sense of structure and organization was much more sophisticated than mine. And the things that he worked to achieve, I never would have had the talent to achieve. My strength in the business, I believe, was operation, execution, marketing, and branding for this particular company. And at a certain point, I don't think the logic that I had to run those departments would fit into a large scale chain. At one point, we had 1,000 workers. At one point, our kitchen had 250 workers in it. And so this thing became very quickly well over my head in terms of what I could do with it by myself alone. I would definitely need a team of people to help me lead something like that. And today I have the experience and the knowledge on how to do it. And I don't think it's something that I'd want to do because when you have a company that large, it becomes difficult to control the optics of how people relate to management versus hourly labor, management versus corporate to hourly labor, and of course the consumer to the overall brand, to the overall culture. It takes a long time to develop those things because they're really important actually. They're these are the things that drive people to want to buy your products. What's going on within the culture and the brand. Is it cool? Is it relevant? Are the products useful? Are they timely? So there's no guarantees when you have a business that 10 years into having a successful business that the products that you have are still going to be desirable, and so business has to be constantly evolving into whatever shape it has to take. To be stagnant is to risk becoming obsolete. And so I would say that for me, where Juice Press started to lose its fun is that I couldn't be spontaneous. The brand at large within the states with the different types of landlords and the customer base was no longer a place that was suitable for my type of humor and marketing. I don't think that a USDA organic, non-HPP'd, 3-day shelf life product in general is something that scales well. Certainly does not scale well when it's being produced in a central commissary in Long Island City, New York, that has to get product to a store in Washington, D.C. That model is terrible. And so that store in DC has to become something totally different than what the first store ever was. Almost every aspect of what made the first store great was no longer something that the brand could support. The type of people that we would hire, the type of oddball products that made people smile and laugh, the messaging, and just having a street fighter entrepreneur owner who is running things, dealing with the day to day, doesn't necessarily fit when you have a large company that has a very professionalized corporate staff and structure. I would say that I was not a good fit for the company any longer. And I think that I exited at the right time. Certainly exited before, long before COVID, because I'd be not in the best position right now had I still be part of the company. Definitely would have stress beyond comprehension. I definitely want to talk more about some of the scariest points in the juice press years for me that I don't think are confidential. Really, they showcase common problems that people have in businesses. I have to clear whether or not I'm allowed to talk about those things at this period of time. I'm certainly not going to say anything negative about Juice Press because I don't have negative feelings about Juice Press or the experience. I think that the experience I gained at Juice Press told me the type of entrepreneur that I want to be, and it gave me now in the year 2020 the focus that I would want to have. I definitely need to have a juice bar in my life that I own and operate. I want to consume the product. I want to serve that product. I love to teach people how to eat, how to think about their food. I like the identity of being the juice guy. And so no matter what I do, I think I will have one small store in my field of operation and run it so that it's absolutely perfect. And I'm going to make everything I know free and available to everybody in the food and beverage world and everybody, especially in the plant-based business, especially in the juice and smoothie business. Over time, I'm going to put up all my training manuals, all my philosophies about retail. I'm going to figure out a way. I have everything in writing. I just have to figure out a way to put this stuff up so that it's actually consumable to the handful of people out there like you that want to listen to this kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm going to sign out. Got to go to the family. Check out my other videos here. I have lots of videos on the commissary and things that I'm talking about retail. I'm trying to get better at doing this. Hopefully, in the future, I'll spring for some cash and I'll lighten my cash load by getting some graphics and putting some music in the background, or maybe actually having a guest or two on this non-show show. This is more like of a video journal for me than it is anything I'm taking seriously. I actually find it interesting that there's always going to be 2 or 3 people that are actually in the business that appreciate me putting this kind of stuff up. And so I'm basically having an anonymous conference call, and it makes me feel good. So good luck with your business, guys. Maybe write me a message on any topics that you'd like me to talk about that pertain to areas that are within my field of expertise. Thanks a lot.